Hello, it's now August 27th, so about a month has gone by, and I'm just making this final video for you to show you the last little piece of the process, which is, of course, bottling and then labeling the honey. I had to take a break because I didn't have the bottles I needed. As I think I mentioned previously, this year, for the first time, my supplier was out of the plastic bottles that I really like to have. So I bought some glass from him, and then I had to order plastic bottles from another supplier. If anyone's interested, this year I got my plastic bottles from Dedant, which did a very nice job sending them to me in the mail. It did cost a little bit extra, but this is the first time I've dealt with them, and I'm very happy with the results. So just to recap, in terms of the kind of bottles I tend to use in my beekeeping and honey production. I do like the plastic 8-ounce bottles. They're a nice size, and you can mail them, of course, safely, and they're squeezable. The cap has a little hole here so that you can, squeeze the honey onto something you're going to have it with, like in a cup of tea or pancakes or something. That's a real nice benefit. And I think they look nice. They have that sort of rippled side, and I just like the size. A lot of other people use 1-pound jars, 16 ounces. This is a glass one. I have these for my competitions at the state agricultural fair. They want the 1-pound jars for the competitions. But I don't know, I just don't like having this large amount. And I usually don't have a big enough honey crop that I could produce enough of these that, I'd have as many as I want. So I go with the 8-ounce, but this is the 1-pound size, which a lot of beekeepers do use. But there's the 8-ounce version in glass, which I also like, and a lot of my customers and friends, they like the glass. It's more elegant, it looks nicer, and to me there's not much difference. I sell them for the same amount, although actually the glass costs me a bit more, but I just sell each 8-ounce bottle for the same price. This year I've started something fun, partly because I didn't have really a huge honey crop, and that's the 2-ounce Bear. I was a little disappointed in this. First of all, it's not squeezable. It's kind of a hard plastic, so you can't squeeze it. And also, it just has a removable cap instead of sort of a flip-open cap, so there's no little hole at the top to, actually squeeze out some of the honey. These are pretty much kind of souvenir bottles. I do also sell these, $3 a bottle, but I'm trying this year because I had a smaller honey crop, and I just wanted to experiment with that, and they're kind of cute, and great stocking stuffers, and of course you can also mail these. So I got 50 of these, and so far I've bottled 40 of them, and I'm trying to figure out, how to use up my honey so I get a good amount of all sizes. And then, as I think I mentioned in a previous video, I won this in a White Elephant gift exchange last year at our beekeeping club. It's a terrific gift that somebody contributed to the White Elephant event. And these are really fancy glass 12-ounce jars. Are very attractive. I decided not to use them, first of all, because I only have 12 of them, but more importantly, because the place where you would put the label is just a very weird shape, and the labels that I use, would not fit nicely on that surface. So I had to figure out, is there a way I can redesign my labels and, use them on these jars, and it just wasn't going to happen. It was going to be too much work, and too much expense just for 12 jars. So I have these great, beautiful jars, which at least this year are going to be unused. And, you know, unfortunately, if you don't have a nice label, just having the honey in the jar, I don't know, this, for me at least, there's something missing. So these are going to be remaining for hopefully another year. During my 1-month hiatus, I got distracted by another hobby of mine, which is sculpting. I haven't done a lot of sculpture since a while ago in my life, but I really love it. This is another terrific little COVID activity I do in my basement, and this is a cowboy in a bathtub. So I even found him a rifle, so that seemed perfect. Anyway, completely off topic, but that's how I've been spending the month of August, kind of, while I've been waiting for the honey bottles. Oh, let me just quickly show you the labels once again. These are the 8-ounce labels. They come from a online service called Zazzle. They're not, you know, specifically for beekeepers. I had to design this myself using some graphics that they have, and then obviously my own information that I put on. I've been using this style really the whole time I've been beekeeping, and it really looks great on the 8-ounce bottles. There was a problem with, you know, the new 2-ounce bears and how to label those. And what I ended up figuring out after lots of thinking about it was that I could do, and these are essentially return address labels, and these are mailing labels. So I mean, this is actually meant to go sideways as a mailing label for, you know, a parcel or postage or something. And then these things would be the return address labels. So I'm carefully misusing all of this stuff to produce honey jar labels. This is for the 8-ounce, which works really nicely. But for the 2-ounce, what I finally realized is if I do a return address label, and I don't know if you can see that, but I essentially have the same design in a miniature version and 2 copies of it, kind of one flipped upside down on each label. And then I carefully measure it and cut it with a knife, and then I end up having actually just the right size label for these little bears. And that's what it looks like when it's all assembled. So of course the label has to fit onto the surface of the bottle that's meant to accept the label. And the company that sells these bears, amazingly, they don't sell labels, so, you know, I had no help from that, and I had to just find a way to design one. But this seems to work pretty well, and I think I mentioned earlier there are actually some state law requirements for what has to be on your label. You have to have, of course, your name, at least one way to reach you, the fluid ounces, and maybe optionally is the kind of honey. I just sort of fudge it and call it wildflower honey because I honestly don't know what vegetation my bees go and visit and pollinate. But this complies with Maryland state law. It looks cute. It actually fits with the color scheme of the cap. So I like the yellow color of the label. And let's see what happens. I'm going to be sort of handing these out among neighbors and friends, and I hope they're well received. But what I'd like to do now is just show you real quickly how I actually do the bottling. It's pretty simple, but there's a few little tricks I've learned over the years. And then I'll wrap it up by showing you kind of what I have so far. It's not all of the bottles I will have, but it's something I really love at the end of my honey harvest is to just kind of have a shot or a video of my whole everything, you know, all together. So let me, without further ado, show you how I put the honey in a bottle. So using the plastic 8-ounce, which is what I'm working with right now, I like to be seated so I can kind of be at eye level with the valve where the honey is coming out, and that's because actually for honey sales and certainly for honey competition, it's very important to fill it exactly the right amount. And the right amount is up to this bead here, which is this kind of ring that's on the outside. That's where you want the level of the honey to be when it's full. And there are two things going on. You want to fill it up to that amount properly, but you also want to fill it in a way that it looks really good, pure, even, and as translucent as possible. This is a pretty good example of translucency. It probably wouldn't win any kind of awards in a judging competition, but it's actually pretty good. This is honey from 2015. This is the very first year I successfully had a honey crop as a beekeeper, and amazingly, it's still really nice, really translucent and pure. And I'm actually not sure why it turned out so well. This is from last year, from 2019, and you can see it's already completely opaque, so you couldn't see through this. That's because the honey is partially crystallized. It doesn't affect the taste. It still tastes wonderful. It's, of course, completely healthy and saleable. And actually, in a way, I like it better because you can kind of put a knife in and spread it on toast. But certainly this would be a real markdown, if not a disqualification, in any kind of a competition. Incidentally, for people who like to have the honey translucent and liquid, the reason I don't put the labels on immediately is because in order to regain the liquid state of the honey, I can put a bottle into some hot tap water and just let it sit there for about 10 minutes. And that tends to essentially decrystallize the honey and return it to a pretty similar state to what it was in initially. And but if I have the label on it, which is largely paper, and I sit it in water for 10 minutes, after my experience has taught me now, then that messes up the label. So I've learned the hard way that actually it's best to not label it until you are actually going to give it away or sell it, because then you know you're not going to be reheating it or trying to reliquefy it. So I leave the labels off generally unless I know I'm going to be giving them away or selling them. And here's an example of honey from 2016 in a glass jar, and you can again see that it has largely crystallized. So the 2015 honey was a real aberration. For 5 years now, it's remained in wonderful condition. But anyway, which leads me to my next point, and that is when I'm filling up the honey jar, I want to fill it up in a way that creates the least amount of disturbance inside the jar as it's being filled. And I've learned and been taught one way to do that is to hold the jar at an angle so the honey kind of lands here and runs down the side. This is very similar to how you fill a beer mug. If you notice bartenders from a tap, they usually hold the glass at an angle, and that is so that you don't get all this foam building up. It doesn't aerate as much if it can run down the side of the container. And the same principle applies here with filling up a honey jar. So I'm going to just demonstrate that real quickly. So first of all, of course, I want to loosen the lock on the valve. Then I try to position myself so I can really see what's happening. I've done this a fair bit now, so I kind of hopefully know what I'm doing. I also like to have a little catch pan, because inevitably, no matter how good you are, some of it misses your jar, or some of it continues to run out after you turn the valve off. And you want to not waste the honey, so I have it go into a little pot on the bottom here. But I usually rest my arm on my leg or stabilize my hand on the counter here. I slowly open the valve you can start seeing the honey run out, and I can increase the flow if I want to, if I want to have it go a little faster. You can see it running in and running down the side of the jar and filling up nicely. And in a minute, I'm going to sort of slow down the flow in preparation for turning it off. And typically, you kind of want the liquid to be getting to the edge of the tilted bottle, and then that's going to be pretty darn good for the bead. You can see that's pretty good. It's actually a little bit higher, but that's okay. I like to give a customer or a recipient more honey rather than less, but you don't want it underneath this bead if you can avoid it. Then there's a little seal that goes on top of the jar. Usually it's already inside the lid, and then I just put the lid on and screw it down. And that's pretty much it. And this came out pretty well. You can actually, I don't know if you can see, but at the inside here there are a few little bubbles, and that can be remedied by another clever little trick, which is to put the bottle in the sun, in sunlight for a couple of hours. So I will put a lot of these bottles out on my deck in the sun tomorrow, and what it does is it warms up the honey, and these little air bubbles rise to the top, where of course they come out of the liquid and into the space, the air space above the top of the honey. And then you have a nice looking jar of honey, which is very, very much what you want in honey sales and presentation. You want it to really look good. We all know it tastes good, but amazingly, people decide on their purchases based on how the jar looks. What is the jar like, but also how does the honey look in the jar. And when I'm done, of course, I close the valve again. I've got many more jars to fill tonight. I just wanted to give a quick demonstration of how I do it. I think I'm going to be doing at least 30 more plastic bottles, and I'm going to have a total of 120. I think I've already either sold or given away around 35 of them. So I'm going to have about 85 total. 85 if they were in the 8-ounce size. But here's what it looks like right now. That's what I have bottled so far. And you can see it's in the background is mostly glass 8-ounce bottles, and then a few of the 8-ounce plastics, which I've just bottled tonight, and then the little bears here. And as I said, I did 40 of them. I have 50 total, so if I find that I have a little extra honey at the end of the evening, I might go ahead and do those other remaining 10 2-ounce bottles. But anyway, this is always a really fun moment for me, just to just to have everything together and be able to enjoy how that looks. And just one final word, you may notice that there's some Domino sugar in the background there, 2 10-pound bags, and I put those there just to illustrate that this is in part my my bargain with the bees. I take some of their honey, but then I feed them a sugar syrup in the fall and winter when they don't have a source of nectar to produce their own real honey. I feed them a sugar syrup, which is a kind of a honey, and that's produced from a mixture of sugar and water. Anyway, I've really enjoyed producing this series, and I hope that you've enjoyed watching it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll hope to see you next year again. Bye-bye.